Lead Time is a podcast of the Unite Leadership Collective, hosted by Tim Allman and Jack Caliberg. Lead Time taps into biblical wisdom for practical solutions to today's burning issues. Each podcast confronts real-time struggles facing the local church in a post-Christian culture. Step into the action with the ULC at uniteleadership.org. This is Lead Time.
Welcome to Lead Time. Tim Allman here with Jack Caliberg. It is a fantastic day, Jack, and what makes it fantastic for me, and I know for you, is the fact that we get to hang out with one of our favorite humans on planet Earth. His name is Ryan Ermeling. Ryan has been a longtime partner in the gospel. Ryan and I, about 8 years ago, did a lot of leadership work in partnership with the Luther group over in Thailand, the Lutheran churches working, and we spent, Ryan and I were in Bangkok, Jack, for a week together, and just been Ryan's been the president, elder at Christ Greenfield, took a journey after selling his business, and we'll get into that a little bit, took a journey, about a 4-year journey up to Vegas, and now is back living here in the Valley and a member at Christ Greenfield. And you are in for a treat today. So that's a little bit of the overview of our relationship. Ryan, tell a little bit more of your ministry story and how you got to this point, bro. Thanks for hanging out with us.
Great to be with you. I can't believe we haven't been on this podcast together yet. So I'm appreciate the invite. It's been a crazy journey, especially last several years as we've transitioned to Vegas and then back here. And, my ministry story, I guess, just in a nutshell, I call myself the black sheep in the family because I'm the one that didn't go into quote unquote true ministry, right? Pastoral ministry, teaching ministry. But I had this journey when I owned a business for 15 years of really diving into, Luther's whole his idea of vocation and what that means, and really starting to develop this deep appreciation for your vocation being wherever you're serving, right? And so I've truly enjoyed that opportunity. But that being said, had the chance, as you mentioned, about 4.5 years ago, to sell a business that I'd built over 15 years ago, or I should say over 15 years, and really wanted to figure out how I can take some business principles that I learned and translate those into ministry. And so that led to the creation of a couple different ventures that I've had fun with. One's called 7 Marches. We do strategic thinking and planning with churches and schools and faith-based organizations. And then out of that came Parent Pulse, which is almost a year old. And we do work with a bunch of Christian schools throughout the country and help them better engage with their parents. So that's it in a nutshell.
You've been doing ministry your whole life, bro. Tell us a little bit, though, before we get into Parent Pulse and 7 Marches. Tell us what you did with Stretch Internet. People may find this fascinating.
So
you've been an entrepreneur, Ryan. You've been an entrepreneur for so long. And let me say this before you get into that: you're not a black sheep, bro. You're a major leader within the Christian church. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate that. I say that jokingly, of course, but yeah, Stretch Internet was a fun business. I'm an entrepreneur by accident. I kind of stumbled into that opportunity, but over the course of 15 years, developed a business that provided video streaming primarily for collegiate athletics. So by the time we sold in 2018, we were the largest provider in the space. Worked with almost 600 schools, about 40% of the market, and provided in the early days before video streaming was so ubiquitous, and before you had YouTube Live and Facebook Live and all these other platforms, schools needed help and logistics and support to get their content, their games out to their parents, their fans, their alumni. And so we built a service that provided that opportunity and had a lot of fun. It was a great way to bring sports, which I love, into a career, and worked, had about 25 people on our team by the time we sold. So it was a chance to have fun with the team and lead and grow together and get in the trenches. And it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I can remember, like, in the early days of me here at Christ Greenfield, I happened to be a couple years serving on the church council. And I remember, Ryan, this is like a long time ago, you were like, hey, I can build a website for the church. And everybody's looking around each other like, why would a church need a website? So I think you put together the church's first website here.
Wow. I remember working on some early versions of the church and the school site. Yep, that's for sure. Back in the day. And when you say church council, that tells me it was a long time ago, because I haven't heard those terms mentioned there in a while.
So good. So tell us about your journey into Parent Pulse in particular. This is gaining some serious traction and helping schools in particular make really good decisions to serve families more consistently based around maybe some felt needs. And it's really, really going well. Tell us what Parent Pulse is all about, bud.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start with my why, or what's become an increasing why for me over the past few years. And it's really this deeper appreciation for Christian ed. And I look at my own journey being in Lutheran schools from preschool through college. I see the impact it's had on my daughters. 2 of them are at Concordia Irvine now, another one obviously in 4th grade at Christ Greenfield, but seeing the impact it's had on them. My wife's a 25-year Christian educator, and being able to see the way that she's changed lives, and now getting to serve as well in the Concordia Irvine Board of Regents and being a part of that I've just developed this great appreciation for what Christian ed is and what it can mean for students. And so the opportunity to try to help our schools has been really meaningful for me. And one of the things I realized, again, taking some of these business principles into play, as I talked to school leaders over the past couple of years, a lot of them don't do a great job of viewing parents as customers, right? And I realized that, hey, first and foremost, our parents are our ministry, they're our community. Starbucks talks about them being the third place. I think a lot of our Christian schools view their schools as that third place, right? And that's great. I love that. That's the way it should be. But parents also have this hat of customer, right? Either they're paying hard-earned money for tuition for a service, which by definition makes them a customer, or in some school choice states like Arizona, you might not be paying a dime, but you have choice, and that still makes you a customer as well. So really trying to help our schools leverage that concept, leverage that understanding. In business, if I went more than a week or two without proactively and intentionally seeking out feedback from our customers, you're already behind the 8 ball. You're behind the curve, right? And so trying to help our schools understand, the more you can be aligned with what's on the hearts and minds of your parents, your customers, the better you're going to be positioned to make change, to understand trajectories, how you're doing missionally, how you're hitting on your core values, your unique value propositions, all those business terms we throw out there. But trying to give schools more data and feedback on a consistent basis, not just this once a year survey, but throughout the year, giving them that data and that feedback to help them better understand what's going on with their parents, their customers.
And Ryan, your service uses one of the most powerful survey tools that is out there right now, and for customer engagement, it's based around the Net Promoter model, right?
Yeah, that's the first question we ask in every one of our surveys, right? So bringing this Net Promoter concept to schools, and the studies show that's the single biggest indicator of customer satisfaction, right? So why would a school not want to have a single number and be able to track how that changes over the course of a year to understand, hey, our parents out in the community, are they referring us? Are they happy enough with what we're doing to be actively referring us to their friends and colleagues? So that Net Promoter question is such a great barometer for schools.
Could you try to, I know this is super, super technical here, but could you try, for the folks that are listening, maybe try and explain in a nutshell how you would describe a Net Promoter type of survey?
Well, so a Net Promoter question, if you will, is essentially a Likert style question, right? 0 through 10. It says, hey, on this scale, how likely are you to recommend us to a friend or colleague? And so out of that, you anybody who gives you a 9 or 10, and I don't want to get too technical here, but a 9 or 10 is a promoter. A 7 or 8, somebody who's just shy of maybe being a raving fan, is considered a passive, and a 0 through 6 is a detractor, right? Somebody who can be all the way from just being lukewarm to being actually proactively negative in the community about your organization, right? And so obviously you want to try to develop as many promoters as you can and determine how can we take these passives up to promoters, and how can we see what's going on with our detractors and what are their concerns and issues. So a good Net Promoter survey will also have a follow-up question to that initial score. It says, why did you give us this score? Right. And so now you have some qualitative data and feedback to really break down that score and understand why we're doing well, or where the gaps are, or why we're struggling, and it gives you a lot more context.
I think a lot of people, when they think about marketing, they immediately go to the idea like, I need to buy advertisements, I need to buy clicks, I need to just get our name out there without realizing that your brand does more to sell you than sell. Let's say it's a school, but it even applies to a church or any kind of business out there. The brand, the stories that people tell about your institution does more to attract new customers, new people to engage with you than the amount of ads that you buy. If you have a terrible brand, you're just pouring money onto a terrible brand.
Right.
And so I think it is super, super wise for any entity out there to make sure that your brand is really, really solid before spending money on advertisement, so that you're building on this incredible story that your people are already telling about you. And the cool thing about the Net Promoter is that the 10s and the 9s, they are literally, it's not like a metaphor. They are literally going out saying, you got to try this out. This is amazing. And the story of this person that is, not on your staff going around saying that is so much more powerful than, the clicks that you buy. So.
And I that's a great point. I will say one of the things we've found to be a nice value add with what Parent Pulse does, for instance, is knowing who those 9s and 10s are, right? Because sometimes every organization has an idea of who some of our raving fans are, but sometimes there are what I call closet raving fans, right? And so when you see these surveys come back and you're like, wow, I didn't realize they loved us that much. Now you can leverage that person. I don't mean leverage in a negative way, right? But you can engage with that person and say, hey, could you help us? Can we have you, reach out to a prospect that visited our school next week and go out to lunch with them and just have an honest conversation. You can figure out ways to utilize those supporters that you might have never known were huge fans, right? So just that knowledge piece can be so important.
Yeah, they're brand evangelists for you. They're just passionate. They're lit up by what you're doing. And the other thing is conversely true. There could be people that you think are super happy with what you're doing, and maybe in a moment of honesty, they give you a score that's not so great. And that becomes an outreach opportunity. You can say, there may be some things that are going on that I didn't know about. And thank you so much for sharing that, right? And so it allows you to get ahead of problems before they become like really, really, really serious problems. That's been valuable for us using that type of survey.
So, Ryan, how willing are many schools to engage with Parent Pulse? What's the return on folks saying, I'm all in? What have you found? Because here's my probably bias is I bet schools are far more engaging in something like a Parent Pulse than, say, a church Pulse, 7 marches, ULC consulting. Like there are far fewer, lower percentage, I would say, of churches that are willing to do something like this, receive this kind of sometimes critical feedback than schools. I think maybe a little bit more open. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, the idea before Parent Pulse was actually, I think the website's still up, and I'd like to pursue it at some point, but measure.church. That was my initial concept, was let's bring this idea to churches. And to your point, Tim, as we engaged with pastors and started to do some market research and validation, it was a very lukewarm market, right? There were not a lot of pastors in churches, certainly some, but not as many as I'd like, that said, oh yeah, I can see the value of that. I would use it regularly. It would help encourage and inform action and change. We just didn't see that. So it was a good friend of all of ours, Jack Preuss, who kind of turned me on the idea that, hey, why not spin this on its head and apply it to schools? Because I think there is a market there. I think our principals, our heads of school, could see their people as customers more realistically and easily than maybe a pastor, for instance. And so I don't know why that is. I don't know if it's fear of hearing feedback that might require change. I don't know if it's fear of hearing personally convicting feedback or information. I'm not sure maybe what the reason behind that is, but I would imagine fear is a certain component in play there.
Tim, what's your perspective on that? I mean, we've dealt with lots of churches here.
I don't think pastors in general like feedback. That's my general sense. I think we're Normally, I am how I am. Now, I'm drawing a caricature here, and so this isn't universally true, but I am how I am, and well, I don't know if I have the time. Well, most pastors today are older, right? They've been in this for a while. So shame is a real thing. I look back and I should have, would have, could have, but I didn't know at the time. And so just keep my head down and do my job and try to get closer to retirement, because I don't know if I'm even going to be able to enact some of these new things. I can see it, Jack, in some of our work regarding like leadership development, right? I mean, if a pastor wasn't trained to discover, develop, and deploy women and men within their own context, you can kind of feel, I wanted to grow here, and I realized I did Sunday well, but I didn't do necessarily Monday through Saturday discipleship well, releasing and that's just a hard pill to swallow, Ryan. That's heavy. So unless we live in the grace of God, knowing this is like all Jesus, and it's all centered in the cross, it's centered in confession and then absolution under the cross of Christ, and then the new man in Christ being raised up, shame and kind of all of that being set to the side, and saying, I'm just going to learn, I'm going to grow, and while I got air in my lungs, I'm going to try to be everything that the Lord has called me to be here for this group of people. I think a lot of our pastors have pride that masks pretty significant insecurity, because it's a hard gig, Ryan. The expectations are very, very high, and I think we just struggle to sometimes embrace those high expectations.
And Tim, I think I might add to that there's maybe hiding behind tradition, which is to say, like, this is how we do things here. So why would I measure? Because we're not going to change anything, because this is how we've always done things. And so we even elevate maybe some of the orthodoxy and the tradition that we have to say, well, what's the point of measuring it, right?
Yeah. No, that's fair.
And it also almost becomes kind of a fatalistic view on ministry.
And I think the last thing, and I'd love to get your feedback on this, is not every customer idea is a good idea. You know what I'm saying? Why don't we just, because you may get some feedback as a church, why do we do just traditional worship? Why don't you do more like the just singing and, happy clappy stuff over there? And we're like, well, we're Lutheran, we're liturgical, like we're not going to compromise on a lot of these. So talk to us about how a leader discerns the suggestions from a member, a parent, and how does Parent Pulse help the principal or the head of school kind of make informed decisions based on customer feedback?
Yeah, great question. It's both art and science, right? And how you interpret that, a lot of schools need help with that. A couple things that we generally suggest is, one, look for emerging themes, look for repetition, right? Usually the best ideas you're going to hear in multiple ways at multiple times from multiple sources. Mm-hmm. If you hear a random one-off suggestion, that doesn't mean it's not valid, but more often than not, you're going to start to get themes, right? We also really encourage, this is kind of the first step, right, is match this feedback up against your DNA as an organization. Excuse me, your mission, your vision, your core values, right? And does this align with what we believe and who we are? That's kind of the first litmus test, right? And I think part of the problem, just taking this back a step even, part of the problem is our churches and our schools don't even know necessarily how to measure the vision to begin with, right? And understand, are we even aligning with our day-to-day activities with who we say we are? I'll give you a Christ Greenfield example here, because Parent Pulse is now in place there. Mm-hmm. They're using that tool in the school. And one of the things we worked with was looking at their 3 core values, which are Christ, quality, and community. Mm-hmm. And so in that survey, they have 3 questions that address those 3 values. One is, and I'm paraphrasing here, but it's along the lines of the experience at this school strengthened my child's Christian faith, right? And that helps us understand, are we chasing this Christ value and really achieving on this in the eyes of our parents, right? There's another one that talks about the overall experience at this school is worth my tuition, worth what I'm paying in tuition, right? Now we're looking at that quality component. Mm-hmm. And there's another question that talks about the school community feeling like a second family. Now we're looking at community, right? So it's a way to, and I'm going a little bit away from your question, but kind of backing into this whole idea that you really need to start by measuring mission and really asking these questions are going to help you understand, first and foremost, are we missionally on target? Are we who we say we are, right? And that's going to help shape the rest of the feedback you get and help you understand and use that almost as a litmus test for the other feedback that comes in.
I heard, and I'm trying to remember who said this phrase, but he says, you don't count opinions, you weigh them, right? So good discernment is like you're trying to get a breadth of opinions from people, and you're trying to weigh them and understand what is the value that you can derive them. And it's not just a matter of a couple people raise their hand in one direction and others raise their in another direction. There's a lot of discernment that goes into that.
There is. It's and that's a tough nut to crack, right? I mean, it's what a lot of our schools and other organizations, for that matter, struggle with, is what weight to apply to different feedback. And it takes time. And also the other thing that helps is having a team, right? We tell leaders, don't sit here by yourself with this data and try to make sense of it. Bring others you trust, bring your confidence, bring others in, and together kind of start to break down this feedback and this data and work at it together, because you're going to have different perspectives and ideas and thoughts on what this might mean.
Yeah, last thing to land this, it's so helpful, Ryan. I pray that people get connected. As we're talking, No Parent Pulse, how could they get connected to Parent Pulse? What's your website, bud?
It's parentpulse.com. Pretty straightforward.
Love it.
And they can go there and learn more, sign up for a demo, whatever they might want to do. But we're having fun just growing the product here over the past 10 months and working with about 36 schools and counting. So it's been a lot of fun just to see this impact both Lutheran schools and I mean, we work with Catholic schools, non-denomination schools, all across the board and all across the country. So it's been fun to see this thing start to grow.
Way to go, dude. Proud of you, for sure. Jesus is using you in mighty, mighty ways. And the last thing for me from a feedback perspective is, if it's rolling, if it's month over month, quarter over quarter, we're just identifying these kind of themes that you're talking about and making kind of collective decisions based on those themes. And it's real-time decision-making or pivoting, right? So super, super good. Thank you for what you do. Anything else to add as we move on to the next topic, Ryan?
No, thanks for allowing me to share about something I'm passionate about.
Yeah, man. So I'm passionate about this. The Lutheran Church Missouri Synod changing trajectory from a declining denomination. Our theology is on point, as they say. Law gospel distinctives, our tension-filled theology. It is what the world needs. And you're a lifer in the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. Your dad's a pastor, and you've got leaders all over. We're proud of that heritage. We're proud first to be called into the family of faith by grace, centered in the person and work of Jesus. But then, we are proud to be a part of this now. Almost 200-year-old church body that has grown and multiplied in powerful ways. So what makes you most proud and least proud as you look at the landscape? Another thing you may not know about Ryan is he is on the Board of Regents at Concordia University in Irvine, California. Proud of you for serving in that role. But just get up 30,000 feet. What makes you the most proud and maybe even least proud of being a Lutheran Church Missouri Synod member, leader, today in 2023?
Yeah, I think, I'd probably say I'm most proud of just our unwavering commitment to the purity and fallacy of Scripture, right? That is unwavering, and I can't see that ever changing within our church body. And that gives you such great hope, such great peace, such great joy to know that everything we do, everything we say, every decision we make is resting in the unchangeable, truthful Word of God. There's no questions asked there, and so I love that about our church body. Always have. I think something that maybe it makes me a little bit less proud as I survey the landscape, especially over the past so many years, is maybe our reluctance to think innovatively, right? Our reluctance to think differently and determine, how can we change to be an even more effective and more missional church body, right? That's that old that joke. How many Lutherans does it take to change a light bulb? What's change?
Change.
Right? and there's unfortunately truth to that, right? And so I think that's what I maybe get some heartburn about is just seeing in not all pockets, but a lot of pockets of our church body, this hesitancy, this reluctance, and ultimately this fear, right? It's probably fear of change not change in our scriptural thinking and doctrine, but change in how we take that out into our missional approach.
Yeah.
Ryan, so a lot of times when we try to understand what's going well or not well in an institution, we'll use kind of the handles system, structure, and culture. What would you say? Like, because we're all here saying like this theology is fantastic. It's like this is the country, the world needs this now more than ever. But we're saying there's organizationally we could be healthier. What would be your filter between those three: culture, structure, system?
In terms of how I think our church body is.
Yeah.
I mean, if we're referring to culture as the health of an organization, right? The health of the people that are involved and the health of the decision-making body, I'd say we've got a lot of work to do, right? I think it is unfortunately maybe a culture of fear in some ways right now, and so that concerns me. I think there's work to be done in those other areas as well, though. Systems and structure. Yeah. I think the more we can become, and Tim, you and I have talked about this, and I know you use this as well. But the more we can become a bottom-up organization, right, and really employ and deploy our local churches and their communities to think innovatively and missionally and creatively without changing an iota of their doctrinal purity, right? Their doctrinal credence. I think there's work to be done in all of those areas. I'd say that one of those, of those three, though, I think, the culture piece is concerning to me. I think, we've got a lot of work to do in that area and changing that culture to one of joy and openness and creativity and unity.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. It starts with love and trust and getting to know and respect those who have a difference of opinion. And the internet has not helped us. The blog world has not helped us. I just wrote a recent blog on snark, Lutheran snark, and it's not a winsome posture. And then you end up, right now for those, and I may mention this in other podcasts too, but right now we're walking through this struggle that's being displayed for all the world in an argument over the Luther's Large Catechism, came out with CPH, a lot of information, misinformation, all this kind of stuff. And President Harrison, God bless him. If he or any of his team are listening, I'm praying for you right now, because it's a tough place to be, to have multiple different arms of the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod discontent with you for different reasons, and you just kind of get pulled. And what I kind of am reflecting on, Ryan, is culture drift is a real thing. And unless, the senior leader and leaders of various teams all the way down to the local church, unless we're constantly assessing how healthy are we, and the way I assess it truly is how well can we disagree with one another? How well do we walk through conflict and stay connected? And if that's one of your main filters for the health of a culture within the LCMS, we're just not doing it very well. And it's not all President Harrison. I think I'm a systems guy, right? I think it's easy to say there's one guy and no, that's lazy. That's very, very lazy. And until we get people with diverse opinions relating to one another, finding our common unity under the cross of Christ based on our shared theology and training, until that happens and it's set up for that, I know a number of district presidents are trying to do that. The Koinonia Project, this was a major part of my thesis. The Koinonia Project attempted to do that. But there are arms, and it's in the American political extreme, you got the extremes on both sides that literally relish the conflict and really find their identity in being distinct. And it's just toxic. It's not the way of Jesus on so many levels. So yeah, anything else to add to that, Ryan? You're a culture guy.
I just, the word that keeps coming back to me is fear. I think people are fearful of losing power, of losing what they perceive as a pulpit of influence. And I think if we could just have open hands and open arms and saying, hey, we're in this together. We've got a common goal. And to your point, let's dialogue and engage in what this looks like. But I think so much of it is fear and maybe some pride in there as well.
Whenever church? Yeah, go ahead, Ryan or Jack.
Whenever the focus becomes institutional preservation, then we've put ourselves in the law. And it's all just about, we're going to create laws to preserve the institution, and we start to lose the gospel in that conversation. Mm-hmm. And we have to come back to our theology, which again, you'll hear me talk just so appreciative of it. Our theology should give us a cultural presentation of courage and openness, because we are so sure of the gospel which has been promised to us. So right. What is there to fear?
Yeah.
Well, the perfect love of God. Yeah, the perfect love of God casts out fear, man. And whose church is it? It's Jesus' church, and the Holy Spirit is moving. And I really want to believe there are really good days coming for us, that God does his best work through suffering, through trial, through actually sometimes disunity, because then we get to focus up really what does it mean for us to really be the church and walk united together in ministry in a variety of very diverse contexts. Now, some of our institutions that find the most kind of they're the tip of the spear, if you will, are our universities and our seminaries, and they're fantastic. We're products in one shape or another of these wonderful universities, but there's a lot of controversy going on right now that, whether it's Concordia, Texas, or some of our other Concordias, they may be going woke and have these, we throw out all these words, DEI, CRT, rather than really getting underneath what does that really mean? And I can tell you this, because this is connected to large catechism stuff. The Lutheran Church Missouri Synod is not going woke, nor are any of our institutions going woke. We're all people of the book, just doing life in diverse communities. And so what do you say to some of those fears as a member of the Board of Regents, working well with President Michael Thomas there, and right now moving into that 703 kind of conversation heading into the Synodical Convention? Ryan, what are some of your thoughts there?
Well, I agree with you, Tim. These comments about being woke. I mean, people love to point to one incident at Concordia, Portland years ago, and another more recent one at Concordia, Wisconsin. I don't know the argument about Texas is so much being woke as much as it is their view on what governance makes most sense. But I've seen zero instances of this at Concordia Irvine. In fact, we've gone the opposite direction, right? We had a guy named Steve Mueller. He was the chair of Christ College, which is our church worker body, if you will, or school at Concordia. But we actually elevated him to the cabinet level in the position called Chief Missional Officer. And his job is to make sure that Concordia Irvine is ascribing to what it means to be a Lutheran Christian university. I mean, he sits on every interview. He talks to every potential hire to better understand who is this person, what do they believe, do they ascribe to our beliefs, right? And so we're making sure that the people that come into that place are right on line with who we are as an institution. I mean, so these are the types of things that I'm seeing, at least at Concordia Irvine. I know other Concordias are doing the same type of thing. So it riles me up a little bit when I hear these types of comments, because there's no widespread evidence that this is happening at our institutions.
So what do you say to some who believe that our universities are having mission drift? Our Concordias are having mission drift because we don't have a high enough percentage of LCMS students, and maybe even in some cases faculty. How are you addressing that at Concordia Irvine?
Well, I mean, I say look at the Great Commission, and I don't see that anything in there about Lutherans, right? And the Concordia Irvine, again, I can't speak as intelligently with the other Concordias, but our mission statement is all around the Great Commission and what that means to go into all the world, right? And so we have, yes, we are proud of our Lutheran heritage, and we're nothing in our approach, our presentation, our description of who we are has changed from that. But we are proud of the fact that we're creatively trying to bring new majors and programs and students that don't have that faith background in there, because this is now an opportunity for us to share the good news of Jesus, to introduce them to what it means to be a Christian first, maybe a Lutheran second, and to, would you rather have that person at a secular institution where they're going to have very little chance to be exposed to what it means to know Jesus, or would you rather bring them into a place where through relationship, and that's another thing Concordia, all the Concordias do great, is even if you're not in a church work program, your faculty, your teachers, they're talking about Jesus. They're talking about Christian values. They're talking about what it means to live your life with a purpose of that relationship you have with Jesus, right? That's bleeding into all the classes. And so that's why I'm passionate about that place. I did not go into church work, and I had that opportunity to hear that even in communications classes and English classes and you name it, right? So if that is mission drift, I'm not sure how we're defining mission.
That's a good point. So this just kind of hit me, and I'm slow, I guess, from time to time, but what hit me is the same tension exists within the local church or even a Lutheran school, right?
Yep.
Who do we exist for?
Is it the members or is it the community, right?
Right. And so the more we just talk about discipleship, catechesis, instruction, preaching, teaching, and then evangelism, releasing, sending, developing, and deploying. The more we talk about discipleship and evangelism as two sides of the same coin, we're going to end up both in our institutions and in our churches at a much more healthy place than those of us who say it. Because I would never say as a pastor, y'all who are here, like, I don't care about you. I don't want you. I want all the people out there. Like, that's ridiculous. Jesus loves his disciples and apostles, right? At the same time, I will say, and here we're getting trained to go into the mission field, a variety of different vocations, to spread the gospel. Both things are happening exactly. Both things are happening at the exact same time, and I see the Concordia as just kind of navigating that tension, especially in a post-Christian secular day and age in which we live. You can still be Orthodox, confessional, LCMS, Lutheran, especially in your theology, and say, we're going to welcome a number of experts, and we're going to be having some good conversations coming up here with people who may disagree with what I'm saying. But we're going to have a number of experts who are outside of our field, but also are saying, hey, I understand your values as a member of the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, and hey, maybe I want to hear more and go deeper into our sacramental understanding. So really, is it a closed fist? Is our theology something we hold with a closed fist, or do we hold it with hospitality, theological hospitality, for others to come and explore and meet Jesus through our lens?
Well, yeah, Tim, go ahead, guys. Sorry.
I was just say, I love the word explore there too. One of the things Concordia Irvine did over the past year is rebrand and create new campaigns and marketing slogans and you name it, but really trying to get to the heart of what it means to be this unique institution. And I'm speaking in Southern California, but you could probably even expand this idea that we're not a covenant institution. You don't have to sign a statement of faith to get into a Concordia, right? You don't have to go to chapel when you're on Concordia's campus, but yet we are very blatantly Christian and Lutheran, and we want to introduce you to that. But we have they created a campaign called Freedom to Explore. And part of that is your faith journey, right? Freedom to come into this place and understand, what does this mean, right? Let's have conversation about this. Let's have dialogue about what it means to be Christian, what it means to be Lutheran, and let's talk about this, right? It's not bringing it down with the sledgehammer. So that idea, that word explore, I think is so critical.
Yeah.
Jack, anything to add there?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, I mean, this is, if people fear raising up leaders in all kinds of diverse contexts, our experience here in the Christ Greenfield family is the more that we've poured into raising up leaders, we've actually, to me, it seems, become more Lutheran. It's like there's become an even greater passion for our Lutheran theology, and we become even more robust in that. And it's been so the open hand has kind of helped to shape and even affirm the great theology that we care so much about, and replicate that in people.
Back to brand and culture, people just, if you're connected to the wider evangelical world, we have to have a sense of humility here. We're not that large in the big landscape of Catholic to charismatic. And so people just don't know. who we are that much and what we believe. I think we live in this little vacuum. We think we're kind of more significant in the broader Christian landscape than we actually are. So we should enter in with humility and yet confidence to have the conversation, invite people into our hermeneutic, the way we see the scriptures and the way we see Jesus as the center point of all of human history, obviously the center point of scripture. So last question, Ryan, this has been a lot of fun. What do you hope the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod will look like in a decade, in 2033?
Yeah. I think the two words that come to mind immediately, and I saw that you wanted to talk about this, but our vibrancy and innovation, right? I really want our synod to be full of life, and have this passion about, we'll go back to this word explore, right? What new methods and initiatives and ideas are we exploring in a way that are gonna really not sacrifice our substance, but maybe just turn the style on its head, right? And not, when I say style, I'm not just talking about, the decades old contemporary versus traditional type, but how we govern ourselves, how we train up leaders in our church body, how we go on mission together, right? And I would hope that in a decade we're a place where those ideas are being freely explored, where we're having great dialogue around that. And the biggest thing is I want it to be a place where we're not afraid of risk. If we have leaders who are afraid to take risks, I really fear for the future of our synod. If we have leaders that are saying, you know what, we're going to have to take some bold and somewhat calculated risks, but we're going to have to take risks, then I think we're going to be in a healthy place, right? But if we don't have that mindset, I really am concerned about where we'll be headed.
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
Amen.
If people want to connect with you, Ryan, how can they do so?
Email is fine. I've got several, but ryan@parentpulse.com. I'm also pretty active on LinkedIn. That's my social media of choice, if you will. I'm not a big Facebook or TikTok or Twitter guy. So, but LinkedIn.
I'm not either. I was talking with a sweet lady the other day from another congregation, and she was like, wow, you guys, and you in particular, do a lot on social and stuff. And I'm like, well, thanks. I'm not there. We have a team of people that are there, but I just spend very, very little time on any of those. But I'm glad they exist so that we can have conversations like this, Ryan. Thank you for being my friend and a partner in the gospel. And again, if you want to get in touch with Parent Pulse, hang out with Ryan and his team, please go to parentpulse.com and they will take care of you, especially if you are a church. And if you're a church looking to grow as well, obviously UniteLeadership.org is always there, and we're working, and I think the relationship, Ryan, with you and 7 Marches is only going to increase as the months and years go on. It's going to be fun to see how that evolves. This is Lead Time. Sharing is caring. Please like, subscribe, comment wherever it is that you take in podcasts, because I'm not there, but I'm glad you're there hanging out, and it's a wonderful day to be alive as a member with fearless courage, going out into a dark and dying world with the hope and light of Christ. We'll see you next week on Lead Time. Peace. Thanks, Jack. Thanks, Ryan.
You've been listening to Lead Time, a podcast of the Unite Leadership Collective. The ULC consults and brings together cohorts of congregations to build the culture, systems, and structures of intentional discipleship multiplication. To go deeper with us, create a free login on uniteleadership.org for access to exclusive materials and resources. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned for next week's episode.